All right, so this presentation is titled How to Be Happy Forever. How to actually find true happiness, because I think that everyone is seeking happiness in their own way. I feel like that's what everyone is doing, just trying to be happy. And even if someone appears to be doing things that are destructive to themselves, making you think terrible decisions, really, whether consciously or unconsciously, they are just trying to be happy. And for some reason, humans, we don't know what happiness actually is. We don't know the thing that we are searching for, what it actually is. The issue is that we think that happiness, it's right here in the definition. We associate happiness and pleasure. In reality, these two are very different things. Pleasure is short term, it's short lived, it's fleeting. And a lot of us, we are wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain, right? And so we end up becoming addicted to sources of external pleasure because really we're just trying to escape and numb our pain through distractions or entertainment. And we can't sit with ourselves or our own thoughts. We can't sit in silence. And we don't like feeling discomfort. So we indulge in all these sources of pleasure. True happiness, in my opinion, is bliss. It's being content, satiated, obviously feeling peace. And these states of consciousness can be attained at any time. And that's what we're going to get into in this presentation. Where do we locate that source of eternal happiness? The first thing in our way of eternal, everlasting happiness is desire. Desire is not something that we've ever really put under a microscope and analyzed. When you get down to it, a desire is really an artificially created lack. Our mind creates the lack. It tells us we are missing this, we are not this. And then it tries to go out and fulfill it somewhere in the world. And then when we do fulfill that desire, we get a very temporary, a fleeting moment of peace and stillness. We experience temporary happiness because in that moment, we don't have the feelings of agony that come with being limited or feeling lack. In this book, which I talked about in a previous video, Keys to the Ultimate Freedom, Lester Levinson said that lack is really the source of all trouble. And that's where a lot of these quotes that I put in this presentation come from as well. He said, desire keeps one involved in trying to satiate them, which removes their inherent, constant, natural happiness. Desire is a bottomless pit that can never be filled up. And so we become a victim of our desires, constantly chasing, never fulfilled. And because of that, you could say that desires themselves are undesirable, which is crazy to think about. Obviously, today, a lot of us are caught up in materialism. It didn't take me long to realize that the things that I acquired, the article of clothing that I was so excited to buy, I would take it home. I probably wouldn't even wear it. A couple weeks later, I'd be over it. And then you go buy the next thing or the next product or even buy the next course, the next book. That was another thing I had to face too. Eventually, even the books aren't going to lead to self-actualization, and seeking all that knowledge actually can take us away from true knowledge. But anyway, materialism is just not being aware that there is more than just physical reality. There's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes. And so we're not going to find that happiness in that third dimensional layer of reality. The eternal, everlasting happiness is a step above, something that we cannot see. But we spend our lives searching for something that we think we don't have, something that we think will make us happy. And even achievements, I had to come to terms with that. Even accomplishments won't make us happy. It could be the craziest accomplishment. That's why you hear athletes, successful people, because we define success as people that do big things, but we don't associate people that have success on a smaller level as really being successful. But anyway, those people that accomplish these big things, acquiring large amounts of money, fame, they get those things and then they become really depressed. Why? Because that's not where the source of happiness is. And this is the thing that I fall for too, the addiction to newness and novelty, new stimulation. Our brain can get bored very easily. And so we can become a victim of constantly searching for new and thinking that new is better. Something we're not familiar with, we think it's better, we put it on a pedestal because we don't really know about it. The grass is greener mentality. Another thing that can keep us just constantly searching and in a state of unfulfillment. Then I was like, well, if I just let go of all my desires, what would happen? And I feel like at this point, maybe that's like a very high level. Maybe that's like monk, guru, mystic status, just letting go of everything. But I think as everyday people, we still kind of need to have some desires because we need to evolve. And I think that is the best desire. It's an internal desire. It's not a desire that we go searching for outside, but to evolve and grow and transform internally and not looking at it like, oh, I am lacking. Oh, I'm not good enough. It's just, I can become more. I can reach my full potential. And another desire up there with that, I would say, is the desire to be a free individual, a free sovereign being. And not a free externally, a free internally, a free mentally, because the next thing that stands in our way of everlasting happiness is our own damn mind. So, in the keys to the ultimate freedom, Lester Levinson told this parable, and it's the parable of the snake and the rope. Basically, a dude's walking alongside the road, the sun just set, and he sees this interesting shape, and it looks like a snake. It's a shadow, but it's in the shape of a snake. All of a sudden, dude gets scared. He wants to avoid the snake, but he doesn't realize that what it actually was just a pile of rope. And so he created all of this unnecessary suffering because of what he thought he saw. But really, it was just an illusion. And even though this is a pretty basic example, this is what we're doing. This is what our mind does in everyday life. It creates problems and issues and suffering out of nothing. And why does this happen? It's because we know that our perception determines our reality, determines what is real to us. And this is why two people can look at the same thing and get different interpretations of it. We're not looking at something for what it really is, but we filter it based off of our programming, our prior perceptions and experiences. This can really screw us up. Our mind can go crazy and create all these problems that don't actually happen. But this is also where our power lies too. It's empowering to realize that we suffer more from the stories our mind creates than from the actual situations. And even if there's nothing to worry about at all, our mind will just keep creating more problems and things to worry about. And really, our mind has good intentions. It wants to keep us safe, but it ends up holding us back and limiting us and not allowing us to be the fullest version of ourselves. And in this presentation, I'm going to talk about what our true self with a capital S, actually is. And in this quote, it says, become the watcher of our mind. It's something by now we should be very familiar with. I've talked about it in so many freaking videos. Becoming the observer of our mind in this dimension of ourselves, a step above the mind or behind the mind, that is where everlasting happiness exists. Lester Levinson goes on to even say, all thought is the source of suffering. Thinking at all causes us to suffer. And while I think that's a little extreme, these quotes kind of explain that. This one says, isolation does not give quietude. Elimination of thought does. Escape by moving away from problems is not quietude. I thought that moving across the country, while it did bring a lot of growing experiences, the same problems and programming followed me there. We think we have to go out in nature, go on a vacation, go into the wilderness where it's actually quiet to experience mental peace. But we can go out there, go on a hike, and our mind can still be going 100 miles an hour, trying to remind us of everything we have to worry about. That tells us again, nothing outside of us can give us happiness, and our mind is not the source of happiness. These are other things that remove us from our true self, the witness, the observer behind our mind that is just existing, trying to control things, seeking the approval of others, worrying about the future, obsessing over anything at all, needing anything, being attached to anything at all, attached to a certain person, a certain opinion, attached to needing something to go a certain way, needing your life to go a certain way. Being scared, fear removes us from our true self with a capital S. Holding tension in our body, feeling like we have to do this or that. And these are all things we can just let go of. Yes, it may be difficult to overcome mental patterns that have just been ingrained in us through years and years. Yes, it is difficult to create new mental habits, but it is possible. Without these things, we start to create an inner world that can't be disturbed at all, no matter what is going on outside. And these here, I think there's some other quotes from the book that I thought were interesting. Hurriers are worriers, and worriers are hurriers. That was another thing that I got caught up in that was a source of my unhappiness. Rushing things, needing things right now, needing to accomplish a goal right now. This caused more and more suffering. And this one is amazing. A frustrated person is one who attempts to do and carry out things by himself instead of letting the forces of the infinite do it. And that quote is going to lead us right to, so where is this everlasting source of happiness? Where the hell is it? Where can we find it? And we find it in nothingness. Let me explain. You could also describe nothingness as pure being. You could also describe it as radical acceptance, surrender, or letting go and letting God. You could even describe it ultimately as being our true self with a capital S. And again, these are all states that we can create internally. When we are purely just existing, being, our mind enters a state of nothingness, no thought, just pure flow, existing. You could say you enter a state of non-doing, where you're just letting that infinite source or God, whatever you want to call it, go through you, and then you act from that. And we know that if we don't exist in any one of these states, it is impossible to not be satisfied and content. When our mind is fully quiet and we are just existing, it is impossible to be unhappy. Meditation is total rest, wanting nothing, being nothing, doing nothing, and yet having total alertness effortlessly. So that's what I had to practice for a while when I was heavily into meditating. I had to practice just being nothing. I was tired of my mind creating all of this shit, all of this suffering, and so I practiced entering states of no thought. You could also say this is entering a state of neutrality, which is right in the middle here, and I think the first step to start accessing these higher states. Neutrality, not judging things, not forcing things, being okay no matter what, radical acceptance of everything going on in your life, not trying to label it as good or bad, but just all as learning experiences that can help you evolve. Not having to really form opinions, being unattached in every single way. That's what neutrality is. And so when you hear nothingness, it could sound kind of depressing in itself. When you say nothingness, it could sound like, what is the point? But when we are in nothingness, this is the main thing. When we are in nothingness, we become everything. And this is hard to really explain, to really put into words. You have to just experience it for yourself. You can't just learn this and study this and try to grasp it. It's something you really have to experience. But you can get to a state where you identify with every person, every object, every atom, and you really become true infinity. You become everything. And you also really start to see the beauty and awe in everything and start to appreciate life more. This quote, meditation is nothing but coming to terms with your inner emptiness, recognizing it, not escaping, living through it, not escaping, being through it, not escaping. Then suddenly the emptiness becomes the fullness of life. And I thought that actually the first AI description when you Google something explained it perfectly. It says the present moment isn't exactly nothingness, but rather the only reality described as constantly changing, empty yet full, a timeless point where all experiences occur, with past and future existing only as mental concepts within it, yada yada yada. While it's all we have, it's also elusive, always passing, yet always being reborn as something new, a perpetual flux of becoming. So, living in the present moment, we become both nothing and everything at the same damn time. And I think that's just the craziest thing ever to think about. So we got to start observing, where are we living? Are we living more in the future, worrying about things before they even happen? Or are we letting things from the past carry over into the present? Notice when that happens and start to take control and become fully present. I've showed this graphic in plenty of videos, but you can see these are the signs that you're living in the future. These are the signs that you're living in the past. And this is what comes with being present. You see, the joy of being exists there. And so now that we know where the source of happiness exists within us, we have to continually return ourselves to it and make it a habit. So when I notice myself being unfulfilled, obsessing over something, worrying about something, feeling anxiety, fear, whatever, this is how I recenter myself. So first I start with controlling my body. So I slow my breathing down and I relax all the muscles in my body, release all of that tension. Then I gotta give myself a little reminder that if I just exist, I don't have to do anything extra or be anything extra. Everything will work out how it's supposed to. If you're religious, this is where the let go and let God comes in, right? And I also visualize myself expanding. I start to feel expansive. I go from being contracted, being tight, to feeling expansive and free. You can do that by visualizing your energy expanding however you want to do it. You got to find out what works for you. And then I try not to fight the negative thoughts, but I just visualize myself releasing them, letting go of them. It's like I tell myself I don't need to pay attention to these thoughts. And then sometimes I just gotta remind myself of everything that I have, everything I'm grateful for. And that brings me back to a state of needing nothing. And so it has to be at first consistent intervening and recentering in our true self. Got to recenter back in the present before our mind starts to spiral, and just kind of cutting it off and saying, no, I don't have to believe everything that my mind is telling me. And then from this point, after state control is mastered, now we can start to really live in our full self, and we can align with our purpose and passions and pursue them in the most effortless and natural way possible. Because we're no longer attached to needing things going a certain way. We're no longer rushing. We're letting things unfold. We're so totally okay with where we are now, but we know we're going to evolve and grow and expand in the future. And also, very important, once we can silence our mind, reach states of no thought, then we can start to bring up and examine and discard all of this negative programming, all of these traumas that we have pushed down and now they're subconsciously controlling us. We can bring up and discard everything that is not serving us. We can look at these things from a neutral, unattached perspective. We can discard what we don't want and install what we do want. And then I'm going to end with this one. Beingness is the ultimate entertainment. That's where the endless source of happiness lies. No TV show, social media, nothing else can bring us true entertainment and fulfillment like just beingness. We will start to observe and appreciate so much more in our environment when we get to those states. So that's all I got. Hopefully, this presentation helped you a little bit. Let me know what you think.